The strategic partnership between the United States and India is founded on shared values, including a commitment to democracy and upholding the rules based international system. The United States and India have shared interests in promoting global security, stability, and economic prosperity through trade, investment, and connectivity. Established in 1968 with a focus on promoting Indo American business, trade, and economic relations, the Indo American Chamber of Commerce, or IACC for short, has been a catalyst for sustainable growth of business between the two countries. Fast forward to today, as we enter the post pandemic era, what initiatives does the IACC have in store to further facilitate business collaborations and strategic alliances between India and the United States? To find out, I spoke with Mr. Kapil Kaul, the immediate past president of the IACC. Here's what he had to say. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. I'm online with Mr. Kapil Kaul, the national president of the Indo American Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Kaul, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for dropping by.
Thank you, Francis.
Thank you so much. Now, just before we jump into any question with regard to the chamber, I believe our viewers would want to know a little bit more about you. I have seen your YouTube videos. You are an amazing speaker. You are very passionate about the job, about the industry. So we would like to know a little bit about your background, where you come from, what your strengths are, and what made you eventually take up a position in this chamber.
Right. Thank you, Francis, for that brief introduction of whatever you know of me. And also thank you for taking the trouble in having a look at some of my videos of the recordings of my speeches in the chamber that have been happening over the past 1 year.
Right.
About myself, there's a lot to say, which I can talk about myself ever since my childhood. And I can recall back from the age of 4 about episodes in my life and where I come from. But I wouldn't like to talk too much about that. Just suffice it to say that I come from a family of landed aristocracy in India, and I am a Kashmiri by birth and blood. But the manner in which I was educated in one of the oldest public schools in the world, Bishop Cotton School in Shimla, which is an associate of rugby in England. And from the atmosphere in which we grew up in that school and we were schooled, so to speak, it had a lot to do with very, very hardcore ground realities that we were to face going forward in the world. That's one. We were supposed to do everything ourselves, right? And learn everything. Discipline was very strong. And within that were the seeds of my awareness of the environment. So we were taught, it is an Anglican school. And we were taught then, I'm talking now, the year 1961.
Right.
So we were taught that water is very precious, and so precious that in the morning, before we went for our morning run, which was at about 4:15, 4:30 in the morning, the matron would stand and she would monitor how much of drops of water we would put on the bristles of the brush. And even if the drops are more, she would be holding a ruler and she would come and whack us and punish us and tell us, why are you wasting the water? So we used to find it ridiculous then. Food, when we were eating, we were not allowed to waste one morsel of food also.
Wow.
Right? So we were told that even that one morsel that you're wasting is something that can feed someone and someone can survive. So don't waste food. We were taught that time is very precious, environment is we were taken for nature classes every week, twice. We used to go out, we used to observe nature, butterflies, birds, caterpillars, flowers, different kinds of trees, the seasons, because since it was in a hill station in Shimla, so we used to have all the seasons. So these were inculcated in us. And my grandmother and my great grandfather had, and of course my father too, had very strong influence on me at the earlier days. So my great grandfather and grandmother were of a certain lineage, and they were very, very evolved people, and they could foresee quite into the future. So they taught me about what is the meaning of. I'll give an example. My great grandfather would live in Shimla, and in 62, 63, there was a wedding in the family in Delhi, and he was asked to come down to be present in the wedding. And he said that I don't want to go into a polluted city like Delhi, right? So we're talking way back in 63, 64.
Right.
You may even have read in The Guardian recently, and since I'm on WhatsApp now, I can send these articles, where The Guardian started off these environmental issues way back in the 1930s.
Okay.
Right? So coming from the school, I then came to Calcutta in St. Xavier's. That was my college. And I basically, by talent and birth, I'm a painter. So I wanted to paint, write poetry, do photography. And I felt that if God's given you a talent, then it's your duty to use the talent and to make good of it. And I've had experiences in my life, I'll just be short on that for lack of time, that at various points of time in my life, I've been lucky enough to come across people who've guided me at my critical phases of life.
Right.
And I owe it to them. There are about 4 or 5 of these people. I owe it to them as to where I am today, right now. And so I got into college. I did BCom because my grandmother said, look, painting is not going to look after you. And I couldn't understand, why should I need to earn money? It didn't make sense to me, right? So she said, no, you have to earn your own money. You have to look after yourself. And there was a teacher who taught me in my senior Cambridge. She was like a mother to me. And she told me that, Kapil, the family that you're from, you're living in a rarefied atmosphere. Get down to the street level, learn what a real person actually has to experience, and come up from there. So I started my life after college. I took a job, an ordinary job of a salesman in 1980, and I earned what is equivalent to today, $5 a month.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. And many people in my family were aghast, and they said, what have you done? So I said, well, that's what I'm worth today. So it doesn't matter to me. And what matters to me is that I cannot say that my family got me this job, my position got me this job. It's who I am that has got me this job. So if I do well, I'm responsible. I'll be happy for it. If I fail, I'm not going to blame any of you and say that you got me this job. What have you gone and done? Now bail me out. Right. So I wanted to see what role am I going to play. I've come into this planet, and we're talking now. This is before I started working. When we were having a lot of this Punjab strife in India, a lot of these issues are going on, and I always felt that as a civilization, we are going through the throes of the rebirth of our civilization on a scale. So if you've seen the series, there is this what's his name? I'm forgetting his name. Like David Attenborough, there's another guy. He took out a series on civilization. All right, he's an American. I'm forgetting his name right now, but when I tell you later on, you know who he is. And he went top down and looked down to where we are in civilization on a 12-month scale. So on 12-month scale, we've only reached hardly about the 2nd or 3rd of January or something like that. Right. So therefore, if you look at it from a civilizational scale, what we're experiencing, we are in the throes of a rebirth of this civilization over the past few decades. Maybe, I don't know, maybe since the World War I and II. And if you take this down and take it to a human level, then the pain that we are facing is similar to the pains that a mother faces when she's giving birth to a child.
Right.
All right. So I'm looking at from a hopeful view, and not a end of earth kind of point of view. Though it's a fact that all earlier civilizations have seen their demise, whether it's the Aztec civilization, the Inca civilization, Mohenjo-daro, the Babylonian civilization. And if you look at you're in Singapore, but your colleagues are in Indonesia. Right. You see the Indonesian civilization. You see the Angkor Wat in Cambodia. Right.
That's
now,
right.
It's seen so many phases, and unfortunately, all of them have got wiped out. They got wiped out because of the mistakes of those civilizations. In the same way, the sad part is that we've gone through what we've gone through in the pandemic, but the good part is that we have gone through that, right? That's one. Second is that unlike other civilizations, we are a global civilization, but we have the technology and the wherewithal and the vision and the abilities to actually circumvent a disaster and see the civilization being eliminated. It won't be eliminated, right?
That's right.
So the pandemic was a similar rap on the knuckles as a matron would have given me as a child when I used up a little too much water, right? It was a wake-up call. I think it was a fabulous time for us to understand our place in this world and in what we have to do. And I have a quote which you may have heard in my BBC interview. And it came out then because that's been mulling in my head. And the guy, the interviewer asked me a question in terms of India, US, and China perspective.
Yeah, that's the first question he asked.
So I firmly believe that the perspective is not one of country to country or economy to economy or ideology versus ideology. No, it is existential, right? We got to know our place in this world and this planet today. So that line which I composed at that time was, and I actually composed it because I feel that the defense industry is an industry which is much misunderstood. We don't understand the defense industry properly. The real technology that is made in the defense industry is actually used for civilian purpose, and it comes free of cost, and none of us know about it. Anything, whether we are talking over this Zoom, or whether we have our cell phones, or whether we are on Google, or whether we have the internet, everything is a result of one entity called DARPA, D-A-R-P-A. All right. So the line is that in defense of Mother Nature, man has to be defended against himself, as man is his own greatest enemy. All right. So the only other living thing that behaves like man, which is warring against each other, killing each other, are ants.
Right.
The ants do the same thing, right? And they also have different types of ants. So the black ants are there, the red ants are there, and there's softer variety of black ants that can't bite you. They can only tickle you. But the red ants do have mandibles, and that you have the bigger black ants, their mandibles are big, and they can actually wreak havoc on you when they bite you.
Right.
So coming back to who I am, and from the family that I come from, and fortunately, I'm blessed that I'm also married to a lady. She's also, my wife's name is Kadambari. She also comes from a very eminent family. And our families have contributed in their lifetimes to our country. And I felt that being in this position and with the wherewithal, it is our duty to see that we also contribute to our community, to our country, and to civilization as a whole in a small, minor manner, because we are here to do something. We are not just here just by accident. We must do something and leave our imprint in the sands of time. So therefore, I felt that how do I do it? And I got involved with the Indo-American Chamber in 1993. Of course, from childhood, I would say that the soft power of Hollywood and comics, etc., had their influence on me, including rock music, folk music. Music is a huge component of me. I feel that the strains of music is your highway to heaven. All right. And you are connected to the universe by music very directly. And so my influence has been there with the American system, rightly or wrongly. I'm not going to judge that. And yes, I would say that I'm much more balanced now. Like I said, that countries don't matter. Philosophies are different. We all need to learn and live. And we all have to understand that we are not the owners of this planet. We are mere tenants of this planet. And Mother Nature has just given us that chance to live under her terms, not our terms. So
Exactly.
environment, now coming to the point that I felt that once I've got into this chamber, how do I bring India and US closer? Why? Because if you rid politics out of the equation, then people to people, the connect is very strong. All right. And there have been occasions, and I think while I'm talking to you, a couple of your questions are also being answered while I'm talking to you right now.
I was just looking at it now because the next question I had for you was about you just recently had the Indo-US Economic Summit, and I wanted to ask you about the partnership between India and the United States and some of the key points that were mentioned during the summit. So yes, you are addressing some of the other questions.
That's right. Yeah. So I'm just going through the natural flow of things.
Sure.
So I just felt that America and their ethos and their system represents freedom of all kinds. All right. Some of them, of course, we don't like.
Right.
The freedom of guns and violence is abhorrent, right? But then the fact remains, Francis, is that, and this is something which I will expand a little on in terms of philosophy. You live in a forest and you're a being in the forest, all right? So you got all the animals, you got insects, you got everything in there, right? Now, if you look at the forest, they have a natural balance of things. They don't have any laws. They don't write any rules and regulations. And yet they live in harmony with each other. All right. Why? Because they're each of those occupants or living things, even if it is a small centipede or a worm or a snake or a scorpion, they all have their space and place. And even an elephant knows that he doesn't have to stamp an ant, because the ant can make hell out of him if it just gets into his nostril.
It's a natural ecosystem.
Natural ecosystem. And no, there's the other thing which I'm saying is that you need to learn to respect the identity of the other living thing.
Right.
Don't hold a view that that snake is bad or the scorpion is bad or what. No, it exists. So give that thing. So in the same way, in society, all right, things and circumstances lead you to certain paths which you take, not because you want to, but because of circumstances, right? Now, until those circumstances don't change and you're okay, people think you're a good guy. But because of circumstances, you do certain things and people say, hey, he's a bad guy, right? So if you flip it and go to the side of the other person and see according to his circumstances, you'll think it's all normal. There's nothing wrong in what he's doing. So coming back to this, about guns, etc. So there's freedom in America, freedom of thought, freedom of action, right? And those freedoms have led us into a more advanced civilization in terms of technology, research, space, medicine, you name it. And on the other side, you see India. India is all about spirituality, deep philosophical thought, uh, very good in software skills, all right, entrepreneurial skills. We've got a funny, fuzzy logic way of living, all right. So if you come to India and you have walked on the streets and see, it's like a huge cacophony of voices, people, movements. There doesn't seem to be any kind of rules on a road or a street or whatever, right? So if you look at the Indians who go to the US, they do very, very well out there, whether it's business, whether it's in companies or research or whatever. And then when American, whether it's Apple, Steve Jobs, or whether it is the Beatles or whoever, they get messed in the head. They all come running to India to clean themselves up out here and then go back again, right? And in Hollywood, if you get messed up, you go to Deepak Chopra. All right. All right. And then what's important is now coming to Indonesia, that Indonesia still keeps the philosophy that it learned in the earlier days, right? On the Hindu mythology, the systems, your names. You in Indonesia, you still use the Garuda, etc., in your emblems.
That's right.
Okay. So therefore, you've got your roots. So in the same way, India and America have a lot of connect when you take out politics from the equation. So in the past, on three major global events, India and America came together spontaneously. There was no sort of written agreement or declaration, etc. No, it all happened. And what was it? When the Y2K happened, all right, then India stood up, went, solved the problem, okay, in American industry and American systems. Now, I call that the advent of the knowledge era. It may be a problem. It is not a problem. It was just a catalytic moment of the ushering in the knowledge era. Then from 2000, you come to 2008, when the global crash happened, the GFC happened, right? So what happened? Obama asked Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was the only economist in Group G10, who solved the problem and helped, and our system helped out in resolving the global financial issues, right? And thirdly, when the pandemic happened, right, we delivered on the vaccines, all right? And we were our people also part in process of developing these vaccines. So if you come to think of it, America represents research and development. America represents materialism in its harshest manner, okay? Very hardcore Q on Q financial results, all right? America represents technology, all right? America represents frontier approach to anything. There are never any bounds in America. Like right now, space is the frontier, right? But there's also now the inner space that is the frontier, the virtual space, which is the frontier now.
Right.
So why are we making these advances? Because of the fundamental approach of the American way of thinking, freedom. And these freedoms are not just for an American. Primarily, they are the migrants who've come to America and who have provided this. It's basically the ecosystem in America, the melting pot that allows for this to happen. India, on the other hand, has what I've said, spirituality, etc., and our own strengths that we have. And we are on two sides of the world. So when one sleeps, one wakes. And now because of all these Zoom calls, etc., there is a certain bridge. So in India, we have a thought process right now saying that make in India, right? I say something else. I'm saying make for the world in United States and India in collaboration with other countries in the ecosystem. And in fact, Indonesia and India have a lot in common. Our two countries have a lot in common. The way we live, the way we operate, right? There's a lot that flows through together as two nations. So I understand that there is a lot of countries going back into themselves and saying that, no, we don't need a global understanding. On the contrary, if ever in life, in a civilization where we needed to be together, it is now. The pandemic has taught us we don't have enough resources, money, time to say that we can all do it on our own in our own countries.
Yep.
That's all rubbish.
Yep.
It'll never happen. All right. If that is the case, then as a human being, I need only one hand. Why do I need the other hand? I don't use my left hand, I use my right hand. So why don't we do it? You remove your left hand or right hand, you won't be able to walk straight. You can't even balance yourself. Right? So therefore, this Indo-American equation, which can bring about a lot of, I would say, balance in things. Like Ukraine is not a good thing happening. Okay? Now, why it's happening, I don't want to get into that.
Yep.
Right? There are different views to it. There are different approaches to it. I'm not interested in that. Why? Because we all need to learn how to live with each other.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
Respect each other. You cannot obliterate one person or the other and think that you can only live. No way. No way. It's never going to happen. Right? So I think our two countries, if we come together, right, we can do a lot of world of good in this planet as of now. Right? And I'm nearly through with 25 minutes. And
it's okay. It's okay.
All right. So what you may have seen, I don't think I have that here with me just now, but there is if you see on our logo, there's E3 on our Indo-American Chamber logo on the side. I can send that to you later, right?
Yeah.
So that's conservation of energy, ecology, and the environment.
Right.
So when I was to become the president, I wanted to have a very simple motive to make people understand what the environment is about and where we are. And the idea struck me that, like Einstein talked about, E is equal to mc squared. Right. Even if you don't know physics, you do know that it stands for relativity.
Yeah.
All right.
True.
So that sticks in your mind, and you say that is something which is important in life. So I thought, what could I do? And suddenly this thing popped up and said E3, and I made it interlocking, right? The E and 3, and I designed that logo. I made the logo, and I put it across. And it's basically conservation of energy, ecology, environment. And then I developed it further, which is E3 can be done by controlling 3 C's. So the first C is crude oil. The second C is consumerism, wasteful consumerism. And the third C, I had first said corruption, but then I felt it is wrong. I then hyphenated it and made it circumstantial corruption oblique incentive.
Can you elaborate a little bit about circumstantial corruption?
Elaborate a little bit about
circumstantial corruption.
Yeah. Okay. So the latest example of circumstantial corruption is the pandemic. I have a business, and for no fault of my own, it collapses because of the pandemic. All right. No bank wants to fund me. My friends have been hit just as badly as I am. And I don't know where my next meal is going to come from. And someone comes up and says you're in a bad way, I'm going to help you. At that time, when you're dying and someone wants to give you water, you're not going to ask that guy, who are you? Why are you giving it to me?
Exactly.
I'm not going to take water from you. First, you're right. You're just simply going to take the water you're going to drink, right? So now, after some time, this guy says, will you do me a favor? Will you just take this packet and give it to XYZ, right? So I'm not going to ask him, what is that packet? I'll just say, okay, fine, give me the packet. And I go. And over a period of time, I discover that that packet contains XYZ contraband. I don't know. Okay, anything. It can be anything.
Right.
Then I get confused. And why do I get confused? Because the guy who I'm delivering it to is a very well-heeled social guy who everyone loves and says he's the most beautiful person on this planet.
Right.
Okay. And the guy who was giving it to me, I discover, is not quite the right kind of guy I would have associated with if my times are good. Right. And me, myself, till I was doing my own business, I was a good guy. Now that I'm in this position, am I a good guy or a bad guy? No. I am a guy because of my circumstances. I flowed into this channel for whatever reason.
Right.
Okay. Now, if I were to say that any of these three people, if given a chance to clean up their act and become part of civil society, would they say no? They would say yes. They would like to. But circumstances make them flow through in those situations.
Right.
Right. So I say circumstantial corruption. And when I say hyphenated incentive, all right, in an organization, when is it that the management or your boss gives you an incentive and says you've done a good job, here it is. And then suddenly something happens and he says, okay, I'm giving you the incentive. Now you do this for me. And that this is something out of line.
Right.
Okay. So these are issues which are pretty nebulous. Okay. And we can't, just like I told you about snakes and scorpions, etc., in the same way in society, in the ecosystem, in our commerce, right? And there are a lot of things that happen in this world where only certain specific people can do that job. And you need them for that.
That's right.
Right? The country needs them for that. Strategically, you need them for that. All right? So that's what I mean by circumstantial corruption.
Right.
Okay. Now, these three, if you control, you eliminate one W. And one W is waste. Waste of any kind. Waste of time, waste of water, waste of oxygen, waste of anything that you consume. All right. I actually practice what I preach. My clothes, this is about 12 years old.
Right.
All right. I still wear my wedding suits, which I tailored in 85 and 86. I have my clothes darned and I wear them. All right. I will outlive the clothes if I have to, but I'll not throw my clothes. What I'm trying to get at is that you all know that the latest drought in the world in many areas is because of the amount of water that cotton fiber has taken to grow. Right? So wasteful consumption, and that's another story. I think we just have 5 minutes left. So
you have 5 minutes, yes.
Yeah. So that's another tomato sauce story, which I will say, which will explain what I mean by wasteful consumption and consumerism. So when we were kids and we had the mom and pop stores, the small ones, the small stores, we'd go to buy tomato sauce, right? A very ordinary commodity. And we tell the guy that give me a bottle of tomato sauce, and he'd give us a small 200 gram or 100 gram bottle, glass bottle. And there were just two brands of tomato sauce in those days in India. One was Kisan and the other was Halls, Halls.
Right.
All right. And he'd say that, look, son, next time you want, just give me a shout 2-3 days in advance. I'll order it from the distributor, who'll order it from the company, and then I'll give it to you. Okay. So it was something like a just-in-time, need-based delivery.
Right.
Okay. Now, you fast forward to the modern age. We've got so many malls, we've got so many shells. And now this humble tomato, which earlier, it takes a lot of water and oxygen and things to make a tomato, just grow one tomato. And then you got to pluck it, transport it, polluting, take it to a factory, waste of resources, packaging, plastics, again, making waste.
Yep.
And then you are putting it and transporting it to the shops and malls. And today you have something like 15 or 20 different brands. You got about numerous amount of SKUs from 10 grams to 2 kgs. And then you have this 1+1 offer. You buy one, you get one free. And then you have not just tomato sauce. You got tomato chili, sweet and sour, garlic, whatever, I don't know. So
right.
You wanted just about 100 grams of tomato sauce. And you go and buy 1 or 2 kilos of different kinds of sauces. You come home, keep it, you can't consume them. And after some time, you throw them away.
Yes.
And same tomato goes into the oceans with all the plastics, etc., and pollutes the ocean.
Right.
That's what is wrong about consumerism today. It can't last. It can't last. So where I come from, what I was, what I am, what I'm aiming, I want to make a difference in this planet in whatever small way I can. And now change the pattern of the economy. You got to build into your costing the real cost of the environment when you produce a product. If a bottle of water is costing, like in India today, you buy a 1 liter bottle of water and it costs you, say, $20. But if you take the plastic and what impact it has on the environment, and that $20 should become $200, so be it. Now you say, I'm not going to pay 200 rupees for a bottle of water. Don't. They're not asking you to.
Right.
Go and drink plain water. Today, right. if crude oil becomes 200 rupees a liter, you'll still buy it. Why? Because you still need to ride the damn thing. Now that's another chapter in drones, which is another passion for me, which I'm pursuing, which I can explain to you later, which is it's going to be drone technology is going to be very, very disruptive, just like cell phones on the communication world. All right. And this passion of mine goes back to 1963-64, when I first started reading Jetsons comics, and my father was an aviation engineer. And he explained to me then as to how a horse, an automobile, and an aircraft will come together at one point of time, right? And we have that as drones today. That's another passion which I'm pursuing between American technology and us in Indian business, which is another chapter altogether.
Wow.
So in my position and with Indo-American Chamber, I want to be a part of this agent of change, where people will still get jobs. People will have livelihoods. They'll have a better life, right? But you will live more in harmony with nature. And this civilization will continue forward in a new form. You need to adapt to that change. And the pandemic has provided you that opportunity to adapt to that change, to change your mindset. If you're still stuck in the mindset, then you as an individual may die. Civilization will not die.
That's been amazing, Mr. Kaul. Okay, we have come to the end of part 1. I would love to speak to you some more, which we will do in just a while.
Right.
Yeah, so thank you very much for your time for this part 1, and we will be in touch again. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.